Before we get started, I would appreciate if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Welcome to lesson 3, what is Bitcoin? So we're going to cover quite a bit in this lecture, and it may even be split into a couple of parts or maybe even 3 parts, hopefully just 2. And this is what we're going to cover in lesson 3, the lesson 3 objectives. So hopefully you would understand what is Bitcoin. You would learn about Bitcoin, blockchain transactions, and you would understand how Bitcoin is created. So let's get started. What is Bitcoin? So Bitcoin is the first use case of the blockchain technology known as cryptocurrency. Satoshi Nakamoto, he created Bitcoin with the intention of it being a digital cash system that is peer-to-peer with no trusted third party. So Bitcoin is basically 2 things. Firstly, when people talk about Bitcoin, it is a cryptocurrency, a digital currency. And secondly, when people talk about Bitcoin, they could also be referring to the Bitcoin blockchain itself, which is a trustless system that facilitates the use of the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. So it facilitates the peer-to-peer use of Bitcoin, and that is via the Bitcoin blockchain. So we need the Bitcoin blockchain in order to be able to use Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin, the token. So Bitcoin is 2 things: a system, a peer-to-peer payment system, as well as a digital currency at the same time. So the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. The Bitcoin cryptocurrency can be used for online payments as a medium of exchange if accepted, just like any other form of online currency transfer. The main feature of using Bitcoin cryptocurrency as opposed to other online currencies transfer options is that with Bitcoin there is no centralized middleman to process the transaction. So if you're making an online payment using Bitcoin to a merchant, there's usually no middleman in between to process or facilitate that transaction. It's all done on the Bitcoin blockchain because Bitcoin is 2 things: a currency and a system that facilitates the use of that currency in a peer-to-peer fashion. Whereas with other online currencies, if you're paying in fiat currencies, for instance, like pound, dollars, euros, the yuan, then you would usually need a middleman. Not usually, you would have to go through a middleman, and that could either be a bank, or that could be your Visa, for instance, or PayPal, or a payment processor. So with Bitcoin, you do not need a middleman, and that's the main feature compared to other payment methods. So do merchants accept Bitcoin cryptocurrency? Yes, they do. There's a growing number of merchants and companies that currently accept cryptocurrency like Bitcoin for payment, or they have accepted Bitcoin for payment in the past. Now, I'm just going to name a few, but to check their updated status as to whether they're still accepting cryptocurrency, you could do that yourself, because sometimes merchants accept it for a period of time and then they may not accept it and then go back to accepting it, and so on. So just to name a few, we have Wikipedia, Microsoft, we have Burger King in Venezuela, Overstock, Twitch, Virgin Galactic, Namecheap, Cheap Air, Gift, Benfica, Travala, Expedia, Alternative Airlines, Phone House. So these are just a few out of many others that currently accept cryptocurrency payments on their websites in order to use their services or to buy their products. So the first known Bitcoin purchase. The first known Bitcoin purchase was for a pizza, and it's famously known in the cryptocurrency or world as the Bitcoin Pizza Day, and it's become something that's sort of funny because somebody bought a pizza using Bitcoin in the very early days. I'm not sure which year exactly whether it was in 2009, and they spent about 10,000 bitcoins. Obviously, at the time, a bitcoin was probably worth next to nothing, a cent. So this person was a very, very, very early adopter of bitcoins, and they wanted to obviously use bitcoins for what it's designed for, to be used as a means of payment. So they set the standard, and this man had 2 pizzas ordered to his house for a payment in bitcoins, and he was giving up 10,000 bitcoins. Now, the funny thing is today is that those bitcoins, obviously as Bitcoin appreciated in value, are worth much more. So at the time of this article, when it was reported on June 25th, 2019, it's an updated article because it was reported much earlier, of course. But at that time in 2019, those 10,000 bitcoins would have been worth 80 million. Now, today, a bitcoin is worth about, I think, coming on to £8,000. So £8,000 times 10,000 bitcoins. What is that? And that's how much that man lost out as a result of spending 10,000 bitcoins rather than saving it. But yeah, so this day is known as the Bitcoin Pizza Day, when 10,000 bitcoins was used, and this was the first known Bitcoin purchase to buy pizza. So the Bitcoin blockchain, let's talk more about the Bitcoin blockchain. When any transaction now is made using Bitcoin, it is recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain, forming a chain of ownership. So for example, if John makes a transaction and sends Bitcoin to Adam, and Adam makes a transaction and sends Bitcoin to Sally, these transactions are recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is the ledger, and it does it in a form of ownership. So John's address is linked to sending payment to Adam's address, and Adam's address is linked to sending payment to Sally's address. So you can see and follow the chain of ownership up until the very beginning as to where those bitcoins originally came from. So all transactions are recorded in real time by nodes. We've already discussed what nodes are in the first lesson, so go through your notes. But just to refresh your memory, a node is a computer or device that has the full blockchain ledger installed or downloaded on it. It's running the full blockchain ledger, then it's a node. So it has a history of all the transactions then on the blockchain network, then you are a Bitcoin node. So all transactions are recorded in real time by nodes even before they are confirmed on the blockchain. Now this can be seen on a Bitcoin Block Explorer. So as you can see in the picture, this is an example of the Bitcoin Block Explorer where you can see the transactions that occur on the Bitcoin ledger. As I said, it's all public. So here you can see all the latest unconfirmed transactions. You can see the time. You can see that long string of number called a hash. Then you can see the time, and then you can see the amount of Bitcoin that was sent. And you can see its value in USD. And these are all a list of unconfirmed transactions. So when the transaction is made, if John sends a payment to Adam, that transaction is recorded on the blockchain even before it's confirmed. So you can see that it's recorded as an unconfirmed transaction. And we're going to talk about how transactions are actually confirmed on the blockchain, but the ledger records everything. So it records all the unconfirmed transactions, and then you can see it become confirmed on the public ledger as well. So Bitcoin transaction hashing. What is hashing basically? So on the Bitcoin network, instead of recording people by name involved in each transaction, instead of saying John sent a payment to Adam and Adam sent a payment to Sally, we don't actually know the individuals' names. Instead of doing that for each transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, what occurs instead is a hash. And a hash is basically produced for each transaction instead. So if you were to click on the hash, you would see more information such as the time, the date, the fee, and the addresses. So this address, X address, let's just put a name to it, John's address, you don't see his name, you just see his public address, sent a payment to Sally's address, you don't see her name, you just see her address, and you see the time this payment was made, the date, and the fee that was charged to John for sending that payment to Sally. And this is what you see if you click on the hash. So on the Bitcoin network, each transaction is represented as a hash. So a hash is produced for each transaction instead of using people's names. So what is a hash? A hash is a unique cryptography encryption that consists of letters and numbers. As you can see in the picture, it's a mixture of letters and numbers for the data of each transaction. So the data of each transaction is protected via cryptography, so it cannot be altered, it cannot be tampered with, it cannot be changed, it cannot be edited, it cannot be manipulated, because it's protected via cryptography. And this encryption, this cryptographic encryption, is known as a hash, and it consists of letters and numbers, and it represents the data of each transaction. It protects the data of each transaction, and this is why we can have a decentralized blockchain where everyone can have access to the ledger, everyone can be a node, and nobody can corrupt or manipulate the data. Why? Because it's protected via cryptography and it's encrypted. This is how the transactions are protected, through hashing. So hashing is an encryption process that takes inputs and encrypts them into a random string of outputs. So the inputs could be the Bitcoin transaction data. Example, John sending payment to Sally. The amount that was sent, the time that it was sent, the fees, all that information, that's the input. And then the hash encrypts them into a random string of outputs, and it protects this data from being altered. So Bitcoin transaction hashing is what enables the Bitcoin blockchain to remain decentralized, and it's what protects the Bitcoin blockchain, and it protects it from being manipulated or altered, despite being on different computers, this ledger, around the world in a decentralized manner. And it does not need to be centralized because it's protected via cryptography, so no one can change or alter any of the transaction information, or no one can steal your coins, because everything is protected through cryptography. And the cryptography that is used in Bitcoin is the hashing algorithm called SHA-256. So Bitcoin uses the hashing algorithm called SHA-256. So how are Bitcoin transactions confirmed on the network? So as we've shown, if John sends payment to Sally, as soon as the transaction occurs, it's unconfirmed. But Sally would not be able to spend that Bitcoin until it becomes confirmed on the network. So how are these Bitcoin transactions confirmed on the network? So confirmation of transaction is a very critical stage in the blockchain network. It's important because it's what exactly makes the network works. Imagine you can't confirm transactions, then there's a risk of people double spending transactions. Maybe John sends payment to Sally and then uses that same money to send to somebody else, and then uses it again to send somebody else. Now, in order to prevent this from occurring, you have to be able to confirm transactions that John sent payment to Sally, and he cannot use this payment, that money, those funds, to send somewhere else, because it's already confirmed on the network by consensus that this payment has been made to Sally, and it's confirmed that Sally has now received the coins. She can spend them, and John can no longer touch those coins or do a double spending. So this is why confirmation of transactions is a very important stage in the blockchain network, in order to prevent things like double spending from occurring. And it is what makes the network actually works. So when a transaction is sent, if it is not confirmed, then it cannot be spent. So it needs to be confirmed. However, once a transaction is confirmed, especially after multiple confirmations, it is set in stone and can't be reversed. So the more confirmations you have, the more firm, fixed, for certainty is this transaction that it took place, and it cannot be changed, altered, reversed, or anything like that. It cannot be used to double spend. The more confirmations within a transaction, the more concrete it is. So it becomes a permanent record in the blockchain ledger. So once a transaction has received a certain number of confirmations, then you can rest assured that this transaction is now a permanent record in the blockchain ledger. It's part of the blockchain ledger history and it can never be changed. So miners are responsible for grouping recent unconfirmed Bitcoin transactions together into blocks and confirming them on the blockchain. So if you want to know how a transaction is confirmed, they are confirmed by what we call miners. And we're going to go more into what miners actually do and how they do their job. But this is for now, for you to understand. It's miners who are responsible for taking these unconfirmed Bitcoin transactions and they put them into blocks. So they take these recent unconfirmed Bitcoin transactions together into blocks and then they confirm them on the blockchain. Now this is how Bitcoin transactions are confirmed in a decentralized fashion without the need of a middleman like a bank. So as you know, we do not need a bank with Bitcoin in order to confirm a transaction. In Bitcoin, miners are responsible for that and they do it in a decentralized manner. They confirm these transactions by taking all these unconfirmed transactions, putting them into blocks, confirming them, and then these blocks get connected to the blockchain and it's all done in a decentralized manner. And this is how a Bitcoin transaction can occur, can be confirmed without the need of a third party like a bank. So what is Bitcoin mining? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so as to not miss my next video. Take care and goodbye.